Rockets Fall by Alnate Part 1. Flashback to a month ago. Time to go online, I said to myself as I ran up the stairs to my room where I booted up my computer. I then connected onto AOL. I heard the annoying voice say welcome, then seconds later, an announcement popped up on my screen, and by that time I was finishing my usual ritual of going into the elevator I had made and gone into a room several feet underground where my Pokemon were out of their Pokeballs and enjoying themselves. Usually I have a Tauros, an Electabuzz, a Scyther, a Kangaskhan, a Dragonite, a Gengar, and a Pidgeotto on me. Have fun, I'll be back. Then my little kids waved goodbye to me. I've put my heart and soul into those Pokemon. So I read this announcement, and it was an invitation to a Pokemon tournament where the winner would receive an incredibly powerful Gyarados. Also, it said that if you are in a group of 4 or more that you get one of the presidential suites. I have wanted a Gyarados since I started training Pokemon. All of my attempts at capturing a Gyarados have failed. I then started telling all of my friends who lived in Sunnytown, too. I started by telling one of my closest friends, Rebecca Smith, she has a Charizard, Bulbasaur, Persian, Squirtle, Pikachu, Pidgeotto, and Butterfree. Instant messaging session between Richard and Rebecca. Richmoki, hey Rebecca, long time no see. RS4098, same to you. Richmoki, listen, I just got this invitation to a Pokemon tournament in Viridian City. The winner of the tournament gets a Gyarados. I hope that our Pokemon won't mind battling each other. I mean, do you want to come with me? RS4098, I don't know, I'm pretty tired from my last Pokemon journey, but I have nothing else to do, so okay, I'll go. Richmoki, then meet me at the town park at noon. End of instant messaging session. I did the same thing to Miranda. Another friend and the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. I was lucky to have her as my friend. She's a quiet girl with long brown hair and green eyes and a kind disposition and a strong sense of what is right. She's shy but stubborn and likes to dance when no one's around. I had been trying to go on a date with her since the 6th grade Halloween dance. I just can't work up the courage to do it. So this had failed even worse than trying to catch a Gyarados. She has an Electabuzz, a Dugtrio, a Lapras, a Victreebel, a Pidgeot, and a Dragonair. Session between Richard and Miranda. Richmoki, hey Miranda, what's up? Candleman 4, nothing. Richmoki, meet me in the town center in an hour because I got an invitation to a Pokemon tournament and I thought all my close friends should come with me. We're flying there. Candleman 4, I don't know, I've been having problems with these annoying people who call themselves Team Rocket, and I get pretty tired of them, but I have nothing else to do in this boring town, so okay. End of session. I then shut off my computer and went down the elevator. When I got into the basement I was amazed to see that my Dragonite and my Gengar were playing chess. Or, at least trying to. When did you two figure out how to play chess? I said. Anyway, I recalled all of my Pokemon and put them in a clip. I then put them in a 9mm automatic I had retrofitted myself. Author's note, Richard has a bad throwing arm. The gun also carried Sid darts, temporarily disables psychic abilities, also can be used as sleeping darts. One can put someone out for 24 hours. 2 can be fatal if the darts are tampered with. Pokeballs and my Pokemon. I am an expert inventor, as you can see. I then turned on my laptop and logged on to AOL. I then talked to Greg. He's a computer expert like me. He is also an expert Pokemon trainer. He has a Meryl, Missingno, Millennium, Cyberd, and Charcoal. Session between Richard and Greg. Wedgies 321, hey Rich. Richmoki, I got an invitation to a Pokemon tournament in Viridian City. Wedgies 321, yeah, and Richmoki, wanna come? Wedgies 321, hey, I have not been out on a Pokemon journey lately, so I'll go. Richmoki, meet me in the town center in 20 minutes. End of session. I then did the same thing to Jenna. Jenna is from France and is the town gym leader. She has a Pikachu that she calls Pinkaku because he was involved in a freak accident that left him pink. She also has all kinds of pink and fluffy Pokemon. Session between Jenna and Richard. Richmokey, hey Jenna. Jenna, hi. Richmokey, listen, I got an invitation to a Pokemon tournament in Viridian City, wanna come? Jenna, fine, the gym is deserted, so I'm free. Richmokey, meet me in the center of town in 10 minutes. Jenna, see you there. End of session. I then shut off the computer. I got my suitcase and packed some clothes, swimming trunks, $500, my Sprint Pieces phone, my laptop, skateboard, hoverboard, helmet, and fold-up bike. I then came upstairs and was just about to walk out the door when my mom asked, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I forgot to tell you that I got an invitation to a Pokemon tournament in Viridian City." I answered. "Who is going with you?" she asked. "The gang." I answered. She knew who that was. "Okay. Good luck and be careful," she said, worried. "I will, Mom," I said. "I'll call you when I get to the hotel." I then walked out the door and unpacked my skateboard and helmet. I then put it in hoverboard mode and sped away to the center of town. When I got to the center of town I saw everyone there, except for Rebecca. "Where's Rebecca?" I asked Miranda, who lives in the same apartment building as Rebecca. Her mom was in a plane crash coming back from a business trip in London. Miranda said, starting to cry. I knew this was nothing good or else she would not be crying. There were no survivors, she continued. I came to her side. I put my arm around her. "Miranda, remember that she's in a better place now, especially because she had to deal with a lot of bulls." I said, "Does everyone still want to do this?" "Yeah," Miranda said. "I'm still bored," Greg said, trying to be funny, but not getting a rise out of anyone. "Okay then, get a flying Pokemon out and then tell them to follow my Dragonite," I said. "Dragonite, go!" I yelled and got on him, and so did Jenna and Pinkaku because they did not have any flying Pokemon. Pinkaku said extremely happily. He got a rush out of flying. "I don't think I am going to like this," Jenna said, utterly frightened. She did not like flying in the least. I guess that is why she did not have any bird Pokemon. "Cybird, go!" Greg yelled. Greg then got on. "Pidgeot, go!" Miranda yelled, then got on Pidgeot. "Okay, let's go," I said. Then, we shot off towards Viridian City. We had landed in front of the Pokemon Center. When we had gotten off our Pokemon, and recalled them, we had walked into the Pokemon Center. We then asked the nurse Joy there if she knew about the tournament, and she did. She said that all of the trainers were staying at the fanciest hotel in the city. Sounds fun, don't you guys think? I asked my group. Yeah, they all said. When we had arrived at the hotel, all of the trainers were still in the lobby, checking in. "Okay, I'll check us in, and why don't you guys meet with the other trainers, see what we're up against?" I said. And we went our separate ways. After I had checked us into the presidential suite and got everyone's key to the room, I started doing what my friends were doing, seeing what we were up against. It did not take me long to find two people that I knew, Misty and Brock, the Pewter City and Cerulean City gym leaders. They were talking with a boy with a Pikachu sitting happily on his head. Just when I was about to go up and see them, when an obnoxious-looking kid had interrupted their conversation and Pikachu boy had started off after him, obviously pissed off. Misty and Brock had gone after Pikachu boy. So I could not talk to them. When we got to the door to our room it was 7 o'clock because we had parted hard since 5 o'clock. This had better be worth it. "I hope this room is as good as the hotel is fancy," Greg said. He was worried I was getting scammed. So I opened the door and saw ... darkness. The suite was literally pitch black. "I have a bad feeling about these," Jenna said. "You guessed it, Another thing that Jenna had a fear of, the dark. Even Penkaku, who was virtually fearless, was shivering. I immediately pulled out my gun and switched it to start. I then turned on the lights, and to our shock we saw two people, a man and a woman, and me standing in front of us about 20 feet away. "We, of Team Rocket, have come to take your Pokemon," the man said. "That would explain the radar on their jumpsuits." "Fat chance. Team Stupid," I said, aiming my dart gun. Jesse?" the man said, obviously frightened by my dart gun because it looked exactly like a real gun. "Get out of here or you all are dead," I said, trying to scare them away. I was very tired. I did not want to carry any snoring person anywhere. I then jumped at them, and they shot past us out the door. "Let's get out of here," the Meowth said. "Did that Meowth just say something?" I asked in disbelief. Yeah," Greg said, dumbfounded as much as I was. "Are we just gonna stand here all night or are we gonna get unpacked?" Miranda shouted in such a rare outburst that if you videotaped it, then sold it at one of our town pawn shops, that the manager would give you the freaking safe with the cash in it. Fast forward to next morning. The next day we all got up and went to the area where the tournament was to be held. "For some reason I have a bad feeling about this," Miranda said. Usually, when she said that phrase, big trouble was never far behind. If I knew how big, I would have gotten us all home. I had noticed that there was no human running the tournament. Anyway, the sign-up area was a long row of computers under the keyboards. We all walked up to them, and just before I touched the keyboard, a registration sheet appeared on the monitor. When I had filled it out, the computer asked me if I wanted to switch any of my Pokemon, which I did. I switched my Pidgeotto and my Scyther for my Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. When that was finished, the computer asked me to wait a few seconds while it chose a random opponent for me. I ended up with this kid named Garyoke. I would find out later that he was an egomaniac practically living off the support of his cheerleaders. Anyway, I then went to the arena and after a few things the battle began. "Arcanine, go!" Gary said, eager to fight. "Dragonite, go!" I said. "Arcanine, fire spin," Gary said, grinning in foreseeable victory. "Or maybe not. Dragonite, do that new move I taught you. Quick!" I yelled. Suddenly, Dragonite shot into the air, then started flying in a circle. "Is that what you call an attack?" Gary asked, rolling on the floor with laughter. "Why don't you see what's gonna happen to your Arcanine and then it won't be so funny?" I said. I got his attention. "Huh?" Gary said, confused. "Dragonite, do it," I yelled, getting ready to do a victory dance. This was a move that was gonna leave Arcanine with a migraine. Anyway, Dragonite then pierced the sky, starting a dive bomb attack. Dragonite was aimed for right between Arcanine's eyes. A second later, there was a loud smack, followed by a whimper from Arcanine, who then hit the ground in pain. "You think you can beat me now, Gary?" I asked. He looked like he was in deep trouble. "That was my only Pokemon," he said, in shock because he thought that it could beat me single-handedly. "Better get more Pokemon," I simply said. The match was over, so I went to see how my friends were doing, but their matches were just as fast as mine was. "Has anyone seen Jenna and Penkaku?" Miranda asked. She said she wanted to check out something. Maybe she wanted to meet us back at their hotel. Pretty sure that was what she was going to do. Again, if I had known then, I would have called the cops. So, we got back to the hotel and I could see just from the way the door looked, that Jenna was kidnapped. My suspicions were confirmed when I noticed that there was half a key card in the slot. I don't like the looks of this one cocky. We all screamed in pain. Too bad I didn't notice the opening in the ceiling just above the door. I then looked up at the opening just in time to see Penkaku hurtling right towards me, teeth showing. Just when he was about to tear a chunk of my skin off, I batted him away with my arm into the wall. I know it was cruel, but I was protecting myself. I then pulled out my gun and shot Pinkaku with a dart just before he recovered. I then put Pinkaku in a pokeball. If Pinkaku woke up and was in the pokeball, then it'd be why. You don't wanna know what that means. But, just to give you a hint, I had to put release timer on Pinkaku's pokeball so that when he would wake up he would be out of the pokeball. I then called my mom. Phone conversation between Richard's mom and Richard. Richard: "Hi, Mom." Richard's mom: "Richard, why didn't you call me when you got there?" Richard: "Never mind that, Mom. There's something going down and I don't know what. All I know is that Jenna was kidnapped. Also Pinkaku has gone psycho." Richard's mom: "Richard, come home. Let the police handle this." Richard: "No. Mom, if Team Rocket finds out that the cops are aware of their scam, then they'll kill Jenna and me and my friends." Richard's mom, sobbing: "Richard, how are you going to handle this?" Richard: "Like you think I would." Richard's mom: "You know I don't like violence, Richard. It's the only thing that can save our here though." Richard's mom: "You're right, that way usually gets you out of this kind of situation." Richard: "Enough talk. I need you to send 3 things through the phone: my upload cables, security disk, and that woman's headband that is in my workshop, okay?" Richard's mom: "Okay." I then received the 3 items. Richard: "Thanks, Mom. Now listen, if I'm kidnapped you will receive an email. You are to then email those 3 people from the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI and tell them that I am in a Code Red 20 situation and that it would be a good idea to bring along Delta Force and station themselves at Viridian Police HQ, and no sirens. Got all that down?" Richard's mom: "Yeah, Richard. Oh, crap. Send in the BE backpack exoskeleton." Richard's mom: "Okay, here goes." I then received the backpack exoskeleton. Richard: "Okay, that's it, CIA." Richard's mom, choking back tears: "I wish I had your courage. Bye." End of phone conversation. Now I can tell you what these gadgets are. The woman's headband is a psyband which enables a non-psychic to become a KK psychic. The disc contains a security program which enables an item to be electrified. This means that if you are not authorized to even touch what I put the security program on, you'll get a painful shock from it. Now, I believe that this is my best invention next to the Siddharth, the backpack exoskeleton. I designed it to be a useful electromagnet. For example, I could stick my skateboard, hoverboard to the BE and be able to activate and control it from a control panel on the BE anyway. I then transferred the security program into the BE, my gun, and a psyband. After I had done this, I got my friends into the living room from wherever they were and asked them what they thought was going on. "Maybe we're being invaded by aliens." Greg said stupidly. "Greg, what are you on?" Miranda said annoyed, "It's clear to everyone here that Team R don't even say that name." I interrupted, "I don't need you guys the sob story behind that." Miranda's right. Greg inquired, "TR is the brains behind this." "Whatever it is, okay, I agree. The only thing that bothers me is that TR is getting into the human kidnapping business, so I guess that means I will have to go with Operation Escape," I said, rather cornily. "Huh?" Miranda said, dumbfounded. "Never mind," I said, "I forgot that they didn't know about that. Okay, if you brought in your backpack exoskeleton, give it to me. If you didn't, get it sent through the phone and then give it to me." Miranda then cocked her eyebrow in confusion. "Why are we doing this, Rich?" she asked. "I think I might know how TR wants to kidnap the trainers, so I thought up of a plan, though I have to see if I am actually right about it," I said, "and you know what I am already thinking of doing. Don't you think that by now TR would have made their site so that you can't hack into it and plant that computer virus in their network?" Greg asked. "Haha, Greg my man, you still got a lot to learn about hacking," I said, lying. "Now watch the master do his work." I then pulled my laptop out of my bag and turned it on. Once my computer was in Windows, I plugged the computer into an outlet. "First I have to make sure we're not being watched," I said as I plugged the adapter cable into the wall. I then put my computer on the office desk that was in the living room. The next thing I did was I clicked on a program called Bug Buster. The Bug Buster was a computer program that scans for and destroys unwanted surveillance devices within a certain location. I ran the scanning program, which showed that their hotel room was full of surveillance devices coming out the wazoo. I then ran the Bug Destroyer program. And, in droves, the surveillance equipment fell from the ceiling. I then logged on to AOL. Greg, this is a great time for you to learn why TR's computer programmers are weedheads, I said jokingly. By that time I was already at the entrance screen to the network site. But, I then had a problem that was going to stick its ugly face right at me and kick me in the balls. What? A password? Give me a break. I yelled at the computer. I guess you wanted this, Greg said, while waving a floppy disk in the air. Yeah, I said desperately, then grabbed the disk from Greg's hand and shoved it in the disk drive. The password appeared on the screen. Why didn't I think of that, I said, then smacking the palm of my hand against my forehead, though. The password was Giovanni. I then clicked on the icon that said log in, and waited for the website to load. The big red R shone menacingly on the top of the website. I growled. Team Rocket stood for everything that I wanted to just blow up to Kingdom Come. Ever since I got my license when I was 10, I have had run-ins with two of their best agents, Butch and Cassidy. But, don't think that they are just an annoyance, they are my worst nightmare. I have been kidnapped by them before, but that experience only lasted an hour. And gave me intimate knowledge about their methods. Anyway, I scrolled down to the news, which was just below the R. But, there was no news, just a note that said, all TR members click here for a special message. So I clicked on the hyperlink text. I was going to be shocked at what I would find next. The rest of the website showed the gory details of how the TR employees were to kidnap the trainers. I was getting pissed off. I feel like going to the fitness complex, don't you guys? I asked, expertly hiding my rage. Yeah, I feel like bashing up a punching bag after I just saw what these weedheads are capable of, Miranda said. Greg agreed. You see, my friends and I all take kickboxing and karate lessons at my suggestion after my first run-in with TR. But before I shut off the computer I noticed that there was a hyperlink that said the meaning of the kidnappings. So I clicked on it and immediately the page loaded. Oh yes! I exclaimed loudly, they want to take over the world. Not so. Greg said, unfazed. First they would need money to fund their missions. After that we picked up our bags and went to the fitness complex. At the door of the men's changing room, I noticed that there are showers. Hey! Greg said, stopping, the pool is probably here. I've been meaning to do some swimming, I said. We then went into the changing room. I put on a pair of shorts and a Rage Against the Machine sleeveless t-shirt. I then pulled out a holster and a small pack which contained a small layer tank and other things I had made. I then put on my kickboxing gloves and karate shoes. I then walked out into the fitness complex. I immediately noticed that there was only one level separated into 3 sections in front of me. The first section looked almost exactly like the kickboxing we went to in Sunnytown. The second section was an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The last section was an aerobics class. The only 2 I would go into were the swimming pool and the kickboxing gym. At that moment, Miranda emerged out of the woman's changing room with a swimsuit. She was going to the pool. So, where you going, Merc? She said. This was a joke that we had. You see, this was what I wore to the kickboxing gym at Sunnytown, and she said it made me look like one of those weirdo mercenaries from Texas, and with the gun I actually could pass for one. I was going to ask the same thing to you, Misty. I said. Then we both just started rolling on the floor laughing at each other. Then Greg came out with almost the same thing as me but without the gun and pouch, and he had an Offspring t-shirt and a Walkman. Okay, let's go, I said. Then, Greg and I went to the kickboxing gym and Miranda went to the pool. Almost all of the trainers were in the gym. This was the best hotel I've ever been to in my life. Anyway, Greg and I entered the kickboxing gym and Greg went to the nearest punching bag. "Hitman Lee, Hitmonchan, go!" I yelled as Hitman Lee and Hitmonchan's pokeballs blasted out of my gun. "Okay guys, to the ring," I said. "Mon Lee, Moncham." And the three of us went to the vacant kickboxing ring. I backflipped into the ring. My Pokemon jumped over the ropes and stood in front of me in a fighting position. "Okay guys, the usual. You see, I usually Hitmonchan and Hitman Lee on. That is why I am so tough. I don't always win though. I can get my kicked pretty bad. Round 1 ... fight," I yelled. And the fight had begun. Hitman Lee opened up with a high jump kick and landed it on my chest and I flew back into the pool. "Ugh," I groaned. I quickly recovered and countered with the front flip kick to the head. Hitman Lee was immediately KO'd and fell to the floor like a lead weight. "Hitman Lee, return," I said as I pulled out my gun and cocked the hammer back and the red beam shot out and recalled Hitman Lee. "Okay Hitmonchan, see if you can beat me up," I said daringly. Hitmonchan opened up with a missile punch. He almost hit me if it weren't for me backflipping out of the way. He crashed into the ropes and rebounded with a tackle attack. I ducked and sideswiped him. Hitmonchan fell to the floor and quickly recovered by backflipping onto his feet and executing a haymaker punch and KO'd me. A few minutes later I woke up and found Hitmonchan jumping up and down doing a victory dance. I got on my feet and recalled Hitmonchan. I then decided to look around. I immediately saw Brock and his Geodude using a punching bag. "Yo, Brock. How you doing, buddy?" I said. "Rich, what are you doing here?" Brock asked, immediately noticing me and stopping his exercise. You see, the last badge I got was from Brock. We had become good friends after the match. "Same thing you are, trying to win the Gyarados," I said. "So what are you up to these days?" "Trying to become the world's best Pokemon breeder, traveling with Misty and Ash who argue constantly and you don't want to try and intervene," Brock said, sighing. "I see that your fighting Pokemon beat you up." "Yeah, listen, I have to get a weightlifting machine before they are filled up," I said. "See you later, man." I didn't find a weightlifting machine, so I went back into the changing room and got my diving goggles and swimming trunks and headed to the swimming pool. When I entered the pool area, I immediately put on my diving goggles and dove into the water in the deep end. Once underwater, I sunk my teeth into the mouthpiece that was attached to a small air tank and began to skim the pool floor. When I reached the low end I faced, I noticed Greg and Miranda were playing with a beach ball that their hotel must have kept there. "Greg, how'd you get here?" I said as I took off my goggles and took my air tank out of my mouth. "I got bored of kickboxing, so I decided to go swimming," Greg responded. "Rick, what are those weird shapes in the water?" Miranda asked as I turned around to look. "Oh, crap, get the hell out of the water. TR is using cloaked scuba divers to kidnap the trainers," I said in a fearful tone. This was how I was kidnapped last time. Just as Miranda and Greg had gotten out of the water, I propelled myself onto the ground, but not before a diver thrust his hand out and grabbed my ankle and I fell to the ground with a thud. "You ain't getting away from me, boy," a rocket said with a wry laugh. "Watch me," I said as I whipped out my gun so that I was holding it by the barrel. I then closed my eyes and swung. The rocket screamed. I hit him so hard that he was flung back into the pool, decloaked, and his arm was broken. I staggered to my feet and looked back towards the pool. The other cloaked scuba divers were pushing the unconscious diver out of the water and onto the floor on the far right. But, because I could not see the divers very well, I did not notice them pulling out guns. Suddenly, 5 decloaked divers leapt in front of me, one Uzi in each hand. "You may have taken out one of us, but you are still coming with us," the lead diver said, chuckling. I smirked. "Bring it on," I said, gesturing with both of my hands forward. I noticed that there was a yellow and black striped box attached to the unusually short clip of bullets. The silencer looked like it was built in. But I could not pay attention to details for very long, because they all started firing, but not at me but at the enormous steel beam right above my head. "I will enjoy seeing you get squashed like a bug, ha ha," the lead diver said, laughing like crazy. But the smile was blasted right off his face when he saw me jump back away from the steel beam while I flipped him the bird. Author's note: flipped the bird equals stick up the middle finger. He was stunned that I just escaped death so effortlessly. I was still in the air when I pulled out my gun. "F you!" I yelled in rage as I fired off 3 shots, hitting 3 of the 5 divers and sending them into dreamland for a day, just as I had landed. Unfortunately, my barrage did not even graze the lead diver. Just then the large steel beam crashed to the ground, sparks flying. I looked around. Miranda and Greg were hiding behind a fallen lounge table. The remaining 2 divers then sprayed a barrage of tranquilizers at me and every place else on my side of the fallen steel beam. I immediately jumped sideways, firing off darts until the only sound I heard coming out of the gun was click. By that time I was on the ground behind the steel beam. I pulled out the empty clip and chucked it like a grenade at the gunman. "Oh!" one of the divers exclaimed as he got smacked in the face by the clip I threw. I then popped up and fired 2 darts, successfully taking out the last 2 divers. When I saw the last diver fall to the ground, I ran towards Miranda and Greg's hiding spot behind the overturned lounge table. When I was near the table, I noticed that the table was riddled with holes that were created by the hundreds of darts that were fired their way. Those were no ordinary Uzis. I heard 2 people snoring rather loudly. I noticed that it was coming from behind the table. I looked behind it and saw Miranda and Greg on the ground behind the table with like 100 darts stuck in them from head to toe. "You think you could have not messed with the wrong kid, TR?" I said to myself with an annoyed sigh. I then pulled out of my leather pouch a small tin box that said tranquilizer antidote. I pulled out 2 hypodermic needles and a small bottle of rubbing alcohol and 2 gauze pads. I grabbed onto Miranda's arm and rubbed an alcohol-dampened gauze pad on it and stuck the needle in Miranda's arm and pulled it out. I then threw out the gauze pad and needle out in the wastebasket and did the same thing to Greg as I had done to Miranda, then went into the changing room and got changed back into my kickboxing clothes and strapped on my backpack. By the time I got out of the changing room, Miranda and Greg were waking up. "And someone get the number on that mic?" Miranda asked jokingly, holding her head. "Was it I just got my ass kicked?" Greg asked, also feeling the aftereffects of the tranquilizers. "As usual, that was not funny," I said as I extended my arm to Miranda, who grabbed on and was pulled up by me. The darts fell out when she got up. Greg got up on his own. "Guys, go get changed, I'll meet you at the room." Miranda and Greg nodded. I then went over to the steel beam and climbed over it. I immediately walked over to the sleeping divers. I picked up the guns. Rockets Fall by Ailnade Part 2. I looked at the last gun. There was an engraving on it, but I could that it was in Russian, so I could not read it. I then put the gun in my bag. "Hey kid! Get away from there!" A woman in a blue miniskirt was running over to me. "This is a crime scene." It was Officer Jenny. I turned around and looked at her. She stopped. "Richard Petrini, I should have known you'd be here," she said, shaking my hand. "Jenny, listen. Get all of the police and law enforcement out of here. TR is behind this and I already have a hostage situation, and if I get involved any further I risk the murder of countless people." "Yeah, I know." Jenny interrupted. "How'd you know?" I asked, eyebrow cocked. "2 words, your father," Jenny said, counting the words. "My dad was one of the CIA's top elite field agents. In other words, my dad's a spy. He told me to pass on to you that he agrees with your plan and to get out in one piece," Jenny added, gesturing 2 fingers into the victory sign. I then climbed over the steel beam and walked towards the hull. I walked out of the fitness complex and into the hall where Miranda and Greg were waiting. "What took you so long?" Miranda asked, impatient. "Officer Jenny," I said. Miranda just nodded in understanding. "Man, let's go to the hotel room, I'm tired," Greg said, sighing. So we then went to the hotel room and promptly fell on our beds, snoring. Flash forward to next morning, I woke up. Not in the bed in the hotel room but in a cell. I automatically knew. "Pikachu, you're alive," Pinkaku said, rubbing against my arm. "Are we the only one?" I screamed in pain as I tried to get up. I fell to the ground. I taped a part of my glasses and it automatically went into night vision mode. I looked at my hands, they were covered in blood, my blood. I pulled off my shirt. I had large slice wounds from a blade. If I didn't cover the wounds quickly I would die from blood loss. I was weak from the amount of blood I had lost already. I felt my bag and pulled it off. That took all of my strength. "Pinkaku," I said weakly, "unzip my bag and pull out the box with the red cross on it, then open it and put the—" I was at the point where I was fading into unconsciousness. "Put the bandages in the box on my cuts quickly." I had blacked out. I was down and out for a period of time that must have been an hour. I opened my eyes. My whole torso was taped up and the first aid kit was opened up. "Pinkaku, you didn't have to use all of the bandage," I said, annoyed. I then pulled out two small devices with straps at the bottom of them. I strapped one device to each part of my leg that was broken. I then pushed a button on the devices. I felt a surge of excruciating pain for a few minutes. After that I took the devices off of my legs and put them back in the kit, which I then put in my bag, which I then put on and got up with no problem. "Pinkaku, stay close to me until we find Jenna, okay?" I asked Pinkaku. Pinkaku said, nodding in agreement. "Now how to get the hell out of here?" I said, thinking. I looked at the walls. There seemed to be no entrance or exit door. I looked at a strange white tile in a corner and walked over to it, Pinkaku following me. "A warp tile!" I exclaimed. I stood on the warp tile, nothing happened. I then noticed a control panel on the wall. This must be the security controls for the teleporter," I said, rubbing my chin. "It's probably booby-trapped," I said, putting down my bag and pulling out a large tub of my patented almost everything-proof jelly which could take anything except a nuclear explosion. I rubbed it on. "Geez, I gotta get the stinging out of this stuff," I said as I felt the sensation that I was getting blasted by a flamethrower. "Okay Pinkaku, this stuff is gonna sting. Do you want me to pika? It'll take the pain," Pinkaku interrupted. I knew just as Jenna did that because of Pinkaku's accident that he was stronger. Anyway, I rubbed the stuff on Pinkaku and proceeded to activate the warp tile when I decided not to. I looked around. I noticed a vent that led to the air duct system. The only means of escape readily available. I felt for my hoverboard. It wasn't there. Damn it. I should have electrified my hoverboard, I said, annoyed. I then remembered that my seed darts explode if they don't impact something soft, so they would blow up if they hit the grating. I hope this works, I said to myself as I pulled out my gun, switched it to seed dart, and aimed it at the vent grating. I pulled the trigger, eyes closed, and heard the seed dart explode and the vent shatter into pieces. I opened my eyes. 8. It worked, I said in relief. "Pika pika." Pinkaku said, backflipping with happiness. "I know just how to get us out of here," I said, pulling out my laptop. I powered it up, and accessed my Pokemon storage system. I called up Farfetch'd. Seconds later, my laptop shot out a Pokeball and a Farfetch'd came out. "Fair." The unusually large Farfetch'd said. "Farfetch'd Pinkaku and I will climb onto your back and you will fly us to that vent grating, okay?" I asked. "Fetched, fetched," it said in agreement. Pinkaku and I got on Farfetch'd and he immediately flew towards the vent. When he got to the vent, Farfetch'd clamped onto the frame of the vent while Pinkaku and I crawled off of Farfetch'd and into the duct system. When Pinkaku and I got into the duct system, I pulled out my laptop and recalled Farfetch'd. I noticed that the air duct went straight ahead to an opening and then it branched off to the right. I pulled out my gun, in case someone was guarding the room that the opening led to. So, quietly, Pinkaku and I crawled to the vent at least 50 feet ahead of us. When we reached the next vent, I could already tell that Miranda was the one locked up there. I jumped in with only my first aid kit and an extra shirt to warn so that it was a huge bandage. I ran over to Miranda and saw that she had the same exact injuries that I did. I quickly took off her shirt and wrapped the shirt I had tightly around her chest and stomach and put her shirt back on, then put the devices I had used on my broken legs on hers. They're called fusers. I checked to see if she still had her bag. She did. I waited for just half an hour for Miranda to wake up. "You're awake," I said as I removed the fusers. "What happened to my chest and stomach?" Miranda asked as she woke up, probably feeling a bit tight there. "You had large slice wounds from a blade there." "I had the same thing, only worse," I said as I lifted up my shirt, exposing my taped-up chest and stomach, which was now a huge, blood-soaked slab of bandages. If I hadn't subdued Pinkaku, then I'd be dead for 20 minutes now. "Well, how did you get the bandages on me?" Miranda asked, curious. "That's my secret," I said, winking. "What are we waiting for? Let's get the hell out of here," Miranda said, clearly bored. "So what do we do now?" Miranda asked. "Well, since probably only 3 of the 50 people who were kidnapped have their gear on them, then we will have to raid their weapons room so that we have some weapons to use," I said, "and I know you don't like guns, but we have no other way of getting out of here other than in a body bag. There is no turning back now. They tried to use us for rare Pokemon, but instead they got a nasty shock, so they decided to get rid of us." "Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's kick these weedheads' asses," Miranda said, hyped up after my little speech. Right in front of us was another air duct opening. Miranda kicked it open and we both hopped in. "Pinkaku, find the light switch in this room quickly, okay buddy?" I asked Pinkaku, since I wasn't his trainer. "Pika pika, no problem amigo," Pinkaku said in acknowledgement as he hopped out of my bag and immediately ran towards a wall and flipped a switch. Light flooded the room. "Bingo," I said as I stared at the amount of weapons in the room. Which I knew y'all'd save everyone. Smooch, Miranda kissed me. To this day, I do not know if that was a spur-of-the-moment thing or Miranda really meant it, because I fainted right on the spot. "Richard?" Miranda said as she knelt over to try and see if I was okay. I woke up a few minutes later. "Why'd you do that?" I asked. "I love you," was all Miranda said. "I do too, let's do this so that we can enjoy this later," I said, and had already slipped myself into a suit of body armor and gave one to Miranda, then gave her a headset. I then pulled out all of the Uzis that I had given two to Miranda and pulling 2 Desert Eagles with silencers attached to them and picking out a 12-gauge shotgun. Miranda picked an MP5K. We then looked around for a big storage bin so that we could carry the rest of the guns. I found a hovering one that we put everything in and I easily controlled with my wristwatch. Pinkaku immediately pulled out his electric blanket, hopped into the crate, and promptly fell asleep. "Let's kick some ass," I said as I cocked my shotgun. I kicked down the door and we ran down the hall straight ahead. We didn't have to wait very long to find TR members. Miranda and I crouched behind the hovering crate. "Huh? What's that thing doing there?" one of the 5 rockets asked his buddies. They all then moved slowly towards us, M16s drawn. "Now," I whispered to Miranda. "Ka-ching, ka-ching, plume." My shotgun responded as to why this crate was here, killing 2 of the rockets. I then ducked behind the crate to reload, not seeing how they fell to the floor. Miranda, who should have been up there firing with me, was still behind the crate. "Why are you still here?" I asked Miranda. "My gun's jammed," she said. "Use the Uzi switch to bullets," I yelled back. She then chucked her jammed gun at the 3 remaining rockets. She then popped up and sprayed the hull with bullets. Bomb 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 bomb. Shluk. One of the rockets groaned his last groan as the barrage of bullets from Miranda's Uzis blasted through his neck, spraying blood everywhere. I yelled in pain. It had been 4 hours at that point. The gel wore off. "What's wrong?" Miranda asked, but got her answer when she saw the blood coming from my shoulder. I used my good arm to bust a cap into the 2 remaining rockets' heads. "Take that, assholes, yeah. Ka-ching, ka-ching, plume. Ka-ching, ka-ching, plume." I pumped 2 shotgun blasts into the rocket that shot me in the arm. Miranda had to forcibly stop me from getting a machine gun and blasting the guy into tons of body parts. I was pissed off. Miranda and I then leaned up against the crate and she fixed up my bullet wound. "It's gonna get worse up ahead and we might have to kill Pokemon. You think you can handle it?" I asked. "Hell yeah," Miranda said, more fired up than I was. We kept walking down the hall until we saw 2 warp tiles. "Stay here and guard," I said to Miranda as I stepped onto the first warp tile. When the white lights disappeared, I got off of the warp tile and saw 3 people, Ash, Misty, and Brock. Ash was waking up, so I moved in closer, Desert Eagle in my good arm so that I was prepared if this was a trick from TR. He got up, saw me and put his hands in the air. "Yo, man, put your hands down if you aren't with TR, then I am here to get ya out of here," I said. "So you must be Ash." "Yes, that's my name. How do you know it?" Ash asked. "I talked to Brock in this fitness center, we're friends." I responded, "Man, we have to get out of here. You pick up Misty and I'll take Brock." Ash nodded and picked her up. I picked up Brock and we walked to the warp tile and got out of the cell. We got to where Miranda was in seconds. Ash and I put Brock and Misty down next to the crate. I handed Ash body armor, and the headset. "What's this for?" he asked. "We have to use guns against these people and, if necessary, their Pokemon," I said. I then handed him 2 9mm and a pair of Uzis. "Hey, where are my Pokemon?" Ash asked to no one while he was jumping up and down like a monkey hopped up on sugar. Note, aren't I just the most obviously twisted freak? Someone yells hell yeah, TR took them along with your gear. Miranda said, still standing guard. When almost on cue, Brock wakes up and goes into supermodel mode. Drooling all over Miranda, but I didn't get pissed off because, 1, Brock didn't know Miranda that well. 2, I have seen what happens when Brock sees a Nurse Joy, Officer Jenny, or a really beautiful, putting it as lightly as I can, skeptical, girl. 3, Miranda looked out for herself. Get away from me. EWWW. Miranda yelled at Brock as she spinning roundhouse kicked him into reality. Ouch. Expect her to use a mallet? Well, sorry to disappoint you mallet fans, but why would someone like Miranda, Jenna, or Rebecca need that, especially because they know martial arts pretty well? Barely misses getting his head smashed in by a brick, then flips off and raspberries the person who threw it at him. Person gets up and tries to punch him but gets a lot of bones broken. And to get it off my chest, boy bands suck. Well, some of the songs are okay but they basically suck. _carrot, and nobody better try and throw anything anymore at me or I'm gonna get medieval on yo ass. Guys, can we just get going? I said, annoyed, but no one did anything, so I got pissed off and my head exploded to 200 times its normal size. Will you just get some body armor, a headset, and some goddamn guns? We don't have much time, you dumbasses. After I had finished my rant, the 2 gym leaders did as I told them to. But things were about to get fed up. Surrender now or die. A voice threatened from above. Then, 20 rocket elite rappelled from the ceiling, machine guns drawn. I already had my Uzis drawn, and I wasn't gonna go down without a fight. Let's F this place up. I yelled my battle cry as I backflipped into the air, dropping smoke bombs and opening fire on the rocket elite that were surrounding us. When I landed, I could hear the sound of my friends landing punches on the confused elite. I simply turned the screw on my glasses and I could see through the smoke. I was seeing in infrared. I put away guns and walked up to the nearest elite I could find that wasn't getting a B8 down. I kicked him square inches the chest accidentally. I was actually aiming for the stomach. But it had to land in the place that made the move pure death. It was too late to retract the kick. I landed it and he fell to the ground, dead. Do not try this on someone unless your life depends on it. This move actually works, I am not kidding. If an object, such as a leg or lacrosse ball, hits the chest with enough power while the heart is in between beats, the heart explodes, causing instantaneous death. Rockets Fall by Ailnate Part 3. Note: the rest of this fic will be written in the third person. I am doing this because I figured out that I can write much better in third person. Hey, the stuff I have in store for the 9 people who are reading this is going to be better than the stuff that I had earlier. So sit back, relax, pop open a 6-pack, just don't get drunk on me and puke, and enjoy the show. The smoke cleared. Richard turned off his infrared vision and saw what had happened. That distraction was death for the rocket elite. But he couldn't see Ash for some reason. Everyone but Ash had met in the center around the crate reloading their guns. Misty was the first to notice it. "Where's Ash?" Misty asked to no one, but got her answer when she saw Ash, lying on the ground next to a rocket elite who was obviously dead because his whole sinus cavity was caved in. Brock was gaping at the damage that Ash had done. I knew Ash could deck somebody pretty hard, but I never thought he could crash somebody's skull. Brock exclaimed. By that time everyone was looking at what had happened, or at least Misty and Brock were. Richard and Miranda were working on Ash, or at least making it so that they could move him on a makeshift stretcher. Using the Class AAA First Aid and Moderate Surgery classes that they had chosen to take to get their Pokemon licenses. Richard could tell this was not good. Has took 2 shots from a .357 Magnum at close range, and I am surprised that this kid still has a pulse. One to the leg in a major artery, another thing that I learned about the human body from karate, and one to the outer edge of the lung. Ash is in deep shit, guys. Richard's bad. He then stood up, pulled his backpack off and started looking for something to carry Ash out of here. When he found nothing, he then looked around him, then set his eyes on one thing. The hover crate that carried all of their weapons. Richard then quickly devised a plan in his head and then told Misty and Brock what it was. So basically, what I want you to do is, when we open that door, is to run like hell towards the fire escape door, shooting like Rambo at the same time. Then, when you get to the fire door, take only a 5-second rest. Kick down the door and run like hell with your guns holstered, because you have only 10 seconds to get 20 feet away from the building before this building blows up, or at least the part that we're standing on. Richard said, and also, you should unzip your sleeping bags and put them on the bottom of the crate, that way the shaking won't bludgeon him to death. But what about you and Miranda? Misty asked. Brock had already put his sleeping bag on the bottom of the crate and all of the weapons were in a pile. We'll use my fold-up bike to jump in and hold all of the weapons. We'll survive. Richard said, sounding as if he knew that this would truly happen. Good luck. Misty said. Richard responded with 2 victory signs in each hand with his arms in an X and his right eye shut. Misty gave him a look that would have been translated into "what the F was that?" if it were said, and put her sleeping bag over Brock's. Richard and Miranda did the same thing before they hauled Ash into the crate. Then Miranda and Richard loaded all of the weapons into the large baskets that drooped over the rear wheel of his bike. The bike was made of titanium alloy and had full suspension. When Richard and Miranda were finished, they both got on the bike, Miranda on the cargo rack holding onto Richard, and Misty and Brock were on either side of the crate, one armed with a shotgun, and one armed with a pair of Uzis. Go. Richard yelled at the top of his lungs. Brock and Misty gave the crate a mighty push and ran like hell, guns blazing. Meanwhile in Giovanna's office, things were calmer. "Get the prisoners into the basement, now. You are an asswipe if you thought that things were calm." A dark, frightened man hollered. The man, Giovanni, then ran towards an elevator, taking a humongous dump in his pants as he ran. Richard gripped the handlebars with an iron-hard grip in anticipation. When he heard a door being kicked down, he hauled ass out of there. Misty and Brock were running for their lives when they got out the door. They both saw a huge force of law enforcement about 20 feet away from them and they ran towards them. Then they heard a small explosion, suddenly rubble whizzed centimeters past them. Richard, already 3/4 of the way to the basement entrance, could feel the immense fear that his passenger, Miranda, had at that precise moment. Suddenly, he could see a wall of fire coming towards him. Searing heat burned his face. He could see that he had two options: one, keep going and make it into the basement, just as it was sealed off and save both himself and Miranda's asses and live it to get their driver's licenses, or two, sacrifice themselves to the fire and be incinerated. The second of which was out of the question for Richard, who valued his own life. "Hang on tight," Richard said as he popped a wheelie and used his strength to make the bike jump into the air, right over the basement entrance. The firewall was only centimeters away. It was do or be incinerated. Holy shit. Richard hollered as he and Miranda dropped like 10-ton weights to the basement floor. At impact, they were thrown off the bike into the wall. They both got their heads smacked into the wall. They both blacked out. Misty and Brock had made it into the hospital without any problems. The doctors at Viridian General Hospital immediately and started working on Ash. About 3 hours later, a doctor told them how Ash was doing. "Whoever stopped the bleeding from the gunshot wounds did an excellent job. That probably saved his life. He's awake, so you can go see him now," the doctor said, motioning towards the door where Ash was. The two of them, including Penkaku, rushed to the door. Richard was the first to regain consciousness. He immediately turned the fold-up bike into a crate that was similar to the hovering one that Ash, Misty, and Brock escaped the gym with. He took all of the guns that were now in a heap on the floor and put them in the crate except for 4 handguns, from which he pulled out the clips and put them in the 9mm that he carried his Pokemon in. He woke up Miranda and gave her a gun. "Where are we?" Miranda asked, rubbing her head. "In the basement," Richard said, offering his hand to help her up. They both suddenly heard fingers punching in keys into a keypad. "FK. They know we're here. Get behind the crate," Richard exclaimed, and then dove behind the crate with Miranda. Meanwhile, inside the CIA van outside TRHQ. "Dave, I don't know what to tell you, but the infrared satellite is indicating that there is another base underground. Knowing your son, he probably dove down there before the ground floor blew up," a man at a computer console said to another man who was looking at some maps. "Then those goddamn weasels just got themselves a war," Dave said, grinning, and now looking at a live satellite feed of the underground base. "Get me the Pentagon, Jack," Dave said, reaching for the headset that Jack was handing him. Immediately a man's face appeared on the screen replacing the satellite feed. Phone conversation between Dave and the Delta Force leader. "Dave, General, we have a problem. DFL, What kind of a problem? Dave, a hostage situation that TR has us in. DFL, how bad is it? Dave, there are about 50 Pokemon trainers, held captive in that building. Dave moves his body out of the way of the phone to show the general the building. DFL, you mean underground? Dave, yes, General. And I need all of Delta Force to get here and take care of the problem before TR kills all of the PTs and my son. I know he has probably escaped by now, but he can't handle this by himself. DFL, I agree. They'll be here in 5 minutes, and over there in 3 hours. End conversation. 5 minutes later at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. About 30 men, fully armed and in battle armor, were sitting in a briefing room anxiously awaiting their orders, when the general walked into the room. "Boys, we have a serious problem in the Pokemon Islands," the general said in his light southern accent. He then walked over to a screen and brought up a satellite photo of the rocket compound. 50 PTs are being held here for unknown reasons. The CIA team that is there has informed us that these 5P.T.S. The general then punched in a few keys and 5 pictures, one each of Ash, Misty, Brock, Richard, and Miranda, showed up on the screen, have escaped their captors and killed at least 30 rockets, 20 of them being those bastard elites. These 3, the general pointed to Ash, Misty, and Brock's photos, have escaped the compound, so you don't have to worry about them. But these 2 are still in there. So these are your objectives. First, you must locate the 2 escaped hostages and get them out of there. Second, you must locate the other 45 hostages and escape with them and whatever items that TR has confiscated via the 10 choppers that are in the compound, because all other escape routes will be heavily defended and civilian casualties are not going to be tolerated. That is what you have to do. Happy hunting. Meanwhile, back in the compound, Butch, Cassidy, and Radicate stood in the doorway, searching for Richard and Miranda with their flashlights. Come out wherever you are so you can get an ass whopping," Butch said. Richard was angered. Butch the bitch had the stupidity to think that he, a person whose hand-to-hand combat ability was that of a street thug's, could even think of beating up Richard, who had the hand-to-hand combat ability of a U.S. Navy SEAL. A SEAL can kill someone at least 5 ways with their bare hands: a Green Beret, a Spec Ops, Marine, and dozens of others. Richard holstered his 9mm, winked at Miranda, then front-flipped in front of the crate, immediately catching the attention of the 3 rockets. Miranda wasn't going to sit around and watch Richard die. She could see something he couldn't: the AK-47s that Butch and Cassidy were reaching for at that very moment. She backflipped and landed behind the 3 rockets. Immediately, Butch and Cassidy forgot about Richard, whirled around, AK-47s drawn. Richard pulled out his gun and shot 5 times, hitting both Butch and Cassidy in the legs, immobilizing them. Miranda took away their weapons. Richard walked up to Butch. "FKU, asshole," Butch said as he pulled out a .357 Magnum and pointed it at Richard's face. Richard was unfazed by this move, since there were no bullets in the chamber. "You're still a bitch," Richard said. Then, with lightning-quick speed, he grabbed the gun by the barrel and pistol-whipped Butch in the head. Butch instantly blacked out from the blow to the head. They then walked down the hall, more alert than ever. Meanwhile, back at their hospital, Misty, Brock, and Pinkaku were allowed to stay with Ash until he was discharged. But, the hospital would prove to be no safe haven for our heroes. On the roof, a team of 40 Spec Ops Rocket Elite began to rappel down the 4-level building, leaving 10 men on each floor. A similar occurrence took place all over Viridian City. In front of City Hall, the Pokemon Island flag waved in the night sky in its own proud, patriotic way, oblivious to its fate. A rocket gleefully lowered the flag and tossed it to his scyther, who shredded it to pieces. After laughing his head off at his scyther, he raised the TR flag. And the area where the cops were, was surrounded by 20 M1A1 Abrams tanks. Meanwhile, at the AFB the Delta Force was. Instead of the C-130 they expected to see in front of them, the Delta Force team stood in front of a large, white, Godzilla of a jet, bristling with domed gun turrets everywhere. But, remembering that time was of the essence, they rushed into the plane. The team immediately strapped on their parachutes and clicked off the safeties on their guns. Immediately they felt the blast and kickback of the jet engines as it vertically rose out of the hangar into the air. Then, as if it were in a stall it stood, silent. Then 3 loud sonic booms were heard, each one progressively louder than the last, and the gunship shot off at 3 times the speed of sound. Only 20 minutes later, the plane slowed down and dropped altitude 10,000 feet, to the maximum altitude that Delta Force could be dropped. Circular panels all over the plane slid back into the plane's titanium hull to reveal domed gun turrets. On the jets, engine shrouds enveloped around them, making them silent and making the plane able to easily avoid heat-seeking missiles. As the plane moved closer to Viridian City, TR's forces occupying Viridian City were only a minute away from doom. Richard and Miranda stood at the end of the hull. In front of them was a heavy steel door with the nameplate on it that said, Heavy Weapons Room. To their left was a metal staircase going down. Before we go down there we are gonna need better weapons, Richard said. Richard then examined the door and all around it. The door was only locked by a combination code. Dragonite, go! Richard said, shooting Dragonite out of the gun. Dragonite, use your hyper beam on that door while you ram it, Richard said. Dragonite. Dragonite lowered its head. Its horn lit up and a beam of pure dragon energy shot out of it and blasted the door with tremendous force. But the door did not budge. Dragonite then started running towards the door. He rammed it and sent the door flying into a wall. Dragonite, return. Richard recalled Dragonite. Richard and Miranda rushed in. Richard went glassy-eyed the minute they went into the room. Look at all the pretty weapons. Ugh. We're definitely gonna tear some shit up today, Richard said, slobbering as if he were looking at a supermodel. Miranda pulled out her mallet and whacked him 3 or 4 times off the head. Richard hit the floor hard then quickly got up. Meanwhile outside. Lock and load, boys, a man said. Immediately, the other 29 Delta Force team members loaded up their weapons and checked the laser sights. Meanwhile on the ground, a rocket walked out of his post, in a SAM site to go get coffee. It was midnight. Note, I have no f***ing clue as to why I speed up time, and the rocket felt tired as hell wishing that be off post soon. But suddenly, as he walked to the MCP, mobile command post, he heard the faint sound of a jet fly over. The action begins. Meanwhile, underground. Richard strapped the last weapon in the room to his backpack, or at least the ammo pack. He then picked up the minigun. Now this is what I call problem solving. Hey. Richard snickered in joy over the weapon that he now held in his hands. Now are we ready to go down? Miranda asked, sarcastically. Above ground. Holy shit. The rocket said as he looked up to see a giant plane soaring above his head. He then ran back to his post at the SAM site. When he entered the site, he went nuts. Collie. There's an 80-foot bird right over our friggin' heads. And it's got 2 huge American flags under each wing. The rocket said, now finished with his rant. Shit. You're right. Let's blow th. The rocket was interrupted as the whole SAM site was riddled with heavy machine guns. Both rockets were instantly killed. The same thing happened all over the city. Any rocket, above ground, was cannon fodder for the giant gunship. Inside the plane. All right, drop Major Malloy and his troops now, the pilot said. Inside the cargo hold, Delta Force was all riled up. Drop in 3.2.1. Go. Immediately after Major Malloy said those words, the floor below him and his troops opened up and their seats quickly slid into the wall. They dropped out from under the plane and fell for about 20 feet before deploying their parachutes. "This is Medieval Man to Father Boy. Father Boy, do you read?" A man's voice crackled over Major Malloy's headset. "This is Father Boy, what's up?" Major Malloy said. "Sir, I just looked through my scope and all the entranceways are blocked off. I'm gonna blast him with the grenade launcher." Medieval Man said. "I'm okay with it." Major Malloy said, "Boys, we're doing a dive. Break up into groups of 5 and pick an entranceway. When you see your entranceway blow up, make a beeline for it and cut your chute away right over the entrance. Do it now." Immediately, the 30 men and women broke up into lines of 5, except for Major Malloy's group, who had only 4 people. Medieval Man fired 6 grenades, then got in the back of Major Malloy's group just as the whole group dove for the same escape hatch that Richard and Miranda had escaped to. Richard and Miranda were scoping out the laboratory. No one was there, but Richard could not keep his nose from cringing at the smell in the air of weed, cocaine and acid. He then saw a scientist walk out of a small office laughing, clearly stoned. He had an MP5 machine gun in one hand, and a heroin shot in the other. "Give me the sniper rifle," Richard said, reaching out for it. Miranda pulled out one from the crate and Richard took it. He closed one eye, put his other eye in the scope. He could see a red dot in the middle of the scope. Richard centered the red dot on the scientist's temple, and fired. He got a clean shot to the head, sending the scientist into the wall, splattering blood and brains all over the wall. Richard then strapped the minigun back on. "We're gonna go into the office, waste the guys in there and take any Pokemon, guns and gear that they have or stole from the trainers," Richard said. They rushed down to the door. Richard opened fire on the door, destroying it and slaughtering anyone in the room and also emptying the previously used minigun. Only problem with these things is that it takes 5 people to reload them. Richard spat and threw down the minigun. He took out his own gun and attached a silencer to it and took a heavy machine gun out and holstered it. Richard and Miranda went into the office. They looked around, seeing that everyone was dead. Richard kicked down the other door to find Greg and Jenna unconscious on the floor next to 2 empty carts, one half-full cart full of Pokeballs, and one cart full of ammo and guns. "Dude, wake up," Richard said to Greg, while shaking him. "Jenna, get up," Miranda said, shaking her. Greg finally got up and so did Jenna. "What the hell happened?" Jenna asked. Richard then explained. "Shit, man," Greg said, "you're not hell yeah," Richard said, stealing the words right out of Greg's mouth. Miranda walked over to the door at the back of the office. She kicked it down. Inside she found an incinerator turned on and ready to euthanize any unlucky Pokemon in its Pokeball that TR thought weak and unusual, painfully. She tried to shake off the thought when suddenly a noise similar to a footstep made her whip her AK-47 to the right. It was a Pikachu that was trying to get out of its cell. Hell on Earth. By King Richard. Prologue. Note: read Rocket's Fall before you read this fic because there are some strong references to it in this one. After the fall of Team Rocket at the hands of Richard Petrini, the world enjoyed a period of uneasy peace from organized crime. Though, behind the scenes, a new and extremely more powerful Team Rocket rose from the ashes of the old one under the leadership of an unknown person or persons. The new Team Rocket, now known as Team Enforcer, made its presence known violently with an airstrike on Cinnabar Island, effectively destroying it and killing all but one of its inhabitants, Blaine, who escaped somehow. The world powers were crushed by the immense power of T. T has, in 10 years, overthrown the government, destroyed the economy, and destroyed a few of the major sites. The Pokemon has been completely destroyed, save the Elite Four, who have gone into hiding. But out of the ashes of this hell on Earth there is a beacon of light, the Hope, or the Rebellion. Led by Misty, Water Master, and co-led by Commander Richard Ailnate Petrini, Dragon Master and Technology Master. The gym leaders have either been killed, joined the Rebellion, joined T, or gone into hiding. It is the same situation for Pokemon trainers. Richard's expertise has led to the saving of many cities, including Sunnytown, his hometown and the Rebels' home base. Little does the Hope know that they are about to reunite with old friends and enemies and discover the face of T. Chapter 1, The beginning. It was an unusually peaceful day. But the peace was broken by the din of chopper blades and afterburners as two large wings of F-15s and A-10s flew high and in front of the group of helicopters who were escorting 5 V-22 Ospreys somewhere. "Richard, what's your ETA?" a woman's voice said. 15 minutes, Misty," Richard said in response over a radio. "In 15 minutes we'll be toast. Can't you go a little faster?" Misty screamed over the radio, "Piss off. I want everybody at red alert now. Lock and load, boys," Richard said into a headset radio. "I want afterburners on full and I suggest you get a seatbelt on because you don't want to get thrown out at that chopper, do ya?" Richard asked jokingly, while readying his weapons, 9mm pistol, titanium fold-up staff, 2 Uzis, 2 laser-sharpened Rambo knives, and a 50mm machine gun with explosive rounds. This was the standard armament for the rebellion. Richard pushed the lever up on the cockpit that made the Russian gunship. Note: yes, Richard was piloting a Russian helicopter. Don't ask me about it. Shoot forward towards the battleground. Minutes later, they were at the outer reaches of Cerulean City. "Richard, our location is the only tall building left standing. Major casualties, and we're running low on ammo," Misty said over the CB radio, panicking. "We'll get there ASAP," Richard said. "Okay, we are go with occupation procedure. Bill, I will send you the coordinates for the tent now. Once it is up, get your group into the tent and we'll start the medevac. I also want the 2 plane groups to merge and cover the choppers picking up the injured and all choppers not carrying troops to be in the air with the planes. This means that the troops will retreat directly to the tent on my command. Starting ... now. Go! 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 Richard said, waving his arm. Richard pulled out his 9mm. "Dragonite, go!" Richard yelled as he shot a pokeball out of the window right next to his head. A Dragonite appeared next to the helicopter with the headset. Richard then turned the switch on his headset to talk to Dragonite. "Dragonite, stay with the jets and cover the helicopters on the ground, okay?" Richard asked. Dragonite in acknowledgement, turning its head to the helicopter and showing a thumbs up while shooting forward towards the jets. Chapter 2, Shadow Master. Richard had landed his helicopter and exited the chopper with the rest of his troops. But before he exited the chopper, he pushed a button and ran out of the chopper. Just as Richard had jumped out of the chopper and was a foot away, the helicopter powered up and climbed into the air and joined up with the other 3 pilotless helicopters flying towards the large building that Misty was talking about. "Okay, I can already tell that this place is a school," Richard said into the headset. "I need all air units to split up half and half covering the school and half covering the tent, now." Richard was inside a stairwell at the entrance of the school, his troops reloading their weapons. "Okay now, boys," Richard said, planning out the rescue mission in his head. "We take the stairs to the top in line formation. When we get to the top we find Misty's group, get them on the helicopters, then finding any other people in this building. Let's go." Richard then got in front of his troops and climbed to the top of the staircase. When they got to the top, 6 floors up, everybody was close to collapsing, except Richard. In spite of their tiredness, Richard's troops kept going, checking every room for their comrades. They were all starting to think that Misty, their brave and valiant leader, and her men were dead. Some of Richard's troops who had been friends with her started to cry. Richard didn't mind. He opened the door to the last classroom on the floor, swiftly lunged into the room and found Misty and her troops on the ground in a heap in a pool of blood. Misty was still alive, he could tell, but all her troops were dead. They had sacrificed their lives for her. Richard checked Misty's pulse. It was weak. Richard then picked her up effortlessly and pushed some buttons on his wristwatch. Seconds later, 2 helicopters arrived. A Lynx and a Russian helicopter. Get the dead on the Russian helicopter and get the survivors on the links. Richard yelled as he ran up another flight of stairs to the links. Static. Richard? Static, someone said over the radio. Yes, Ortiz? Richard said into his headset as he got onto the links and put Misty into a special holding tank that would keep her in the condition she was in until they got back to base. All but 2 of the elite are alive, all except for Richie are okay and can be put on the Mi-24 with the 2 dead. Ortiz answered, obviously saddened by the 2 deaths. The 2 dead are choking back tears. Anthony and Mikey. Geez. Richard said amazed. Anthony and Mikey were the best of the elite, Misty's troops. It was extremely hard to kill them. Richard was cut off from this thought because the evac team was carrying Richie to his helicopter. Get him in the chamber, guys. Richard said, pointing towards an empty stasis chamber right next to Misty's. The evac team put Richie in the chamber with great difficulty. Man, you guys are weak, come on, move it. Richard yelled at the evac team, obviously annoyed. They got off minutes later and got into the Mi-24. Greg, follow me to base. I also need all covering air units to get into base. I have a bad feeling that something is going to happen. Richard said as he broke away from the roof and sped away towards base, which was 50 feet away. When suddenly a missile slammed into the tail of the helicopter. Oh, shit! Richard said in fright. A computer console instantly lit up and gave off an alarm. Boop. Boop. Tail breach detected. Destruction imminent. Boop. Boop. The computerized voice of a woman said in an emotionless tone. Richard practically jumped out of the pilot's chair and furiously hammered away at the keyboards on the stasis chambers and then merged the 2 chambers and pushed them out of the helicopter. The combined chambers were hovering 4 feet off the ground. Richard pushed a button on his wristwatch and 4 miles away Richard's Dragonite got a signal through his headset and he immediately zoomed off to his friend's location at 3 times the speed of sound. 2 seconds later, Dragonite appeared beside the dying helicopter. Richard leapt onto Dragonite's wing and rolled onto his back just as Dragonite flew towards the stasis chambers and landed right next to them. Just as Richard got off, he looked up to see the links burst into flames. That was close. Richard said to himself. Dragonite, return. Richard said as he recalled his Pokemon, this is Eagle 2 to communications room, do you read? Richard said into his headset. The Eagle call sign was only given to the leaders or VIPs in the rebellion. This is communications room, what's up, Richard? A familiar voice said. Miranda, I need a medevac at this position. He punched the coordinates into his wristwatch immediately. My chopper was destroyed by a missile. Richard said as he looked around him. He had to get Misty and Richie out of here or else they would die. Okay, Eagle 2, a Huey is on its way to pick up Eagle 1 and Battalion 2 from medevac. Miranda said as Richard saw the UH-1 Huey rise out of the roof of the base. Richard was beginning to feel a little bit relieved when suddenly he heard the all-too-familiar sound of a Hellfire missile. UH-1 pilot. Abort and get your ASS back to base or you'll be in deep shit. Richard screamed into his headset, trying to save the pilot's life. Yes, Eagle static, the pilot screamed his last breath as the Hellfire missile ripped through the UH-1, turning it into a huge fireball. Connection lost, receiver destroyed. A computerized voice said. What happened out here, Eagle 2? Miranda asked. Medevac destroyed. Richard said. We have a bigger problem, static. Miranda was cut off by something. Richard walked over to the 2 stasis chambers and noticed that Misty and Richie were, somehow, fully healed. He shut the chambers down and woke them up. I was worried about you 2 for a second there. Richard said to Misty and Richie. Eagle 2, I repeat, the attack group that T sent here is converging on our location. We can't send out reinforcements so you're on your own. Miranda said sadly. Not exactly. Misty said into her headset. Eagle 1. Miranda said in amazement. We'll take care of them for you. Richie added. You have your guns, right? Richard asked. Nope. Misty simply said. Well, I guess that our other weapons could do the job better. Richard said. As you are probably wondering, what the hell are they talking about? Well, ever since the war started, anyone who has become a Pokemon Master receives special powers unique to the person's affinity, or the type of Pokemon they are the best with. Anyway, Richard then pulled out his Rambo knives, closed his eyes, and slammed them together. The result was a blinding yellow light that surrounded the knives, which were combining to create a broadsword. The yellow light did not disappear but only dimmed down a bit. Misty then made large, but smooth gestures in the air with her hands while her eyes and hair began to glow a deep blue while two ice daggers formed in her hands, which she then clasped together just as Richard had done, only the daggers combined to form an ice saber. Richie had formed a coil of electric rope with a noose at the end of it. Then they waited for the battled group. Suddenly a huge wave of dark energy plowed through the moving battle group, obliterating it. Dragon barrier. Ice barrier. Thunder barrier. The three masters said as they crossed their arms, creating a huge barrier that would not only protect themselves from the shockwave but the base also. Holy shit! Greg said in awe of the dark shockwave from a window in the tent, the window in Richard's quarters, where all of his men slept in bunks. The shockwave hit the three masters' barriers with great force, causing huge earthquakes that just caused them to put more energy into the shields. After at least 20 minutes of this chaos, the shockwave dissipated. Richard, Richie and Misty uncrossed their arms and deactivated the shields. They then looked at the land around them, but could still see nothing, only a black fog that enveloped everything in front of them. Commander? What the heck is that? Richie asked Richard. Richard did not even bother to answer Richie's question. Oh shit. Guess who had to crash the party? Missing No. Richard was immediately interrupted by a black blur that slashed Missing No in half and crashed into the ground in an explosion that sent dust and dirt flying. Missing No was disintegrated by the blow. But the man had probably gotten severe radiation poisoning, which the three masters would get soon if they didn't put on radiation suits, immediately. Misty pulled out a small device from her camouflaged jeans pocket and flipped it open. This is Eagle 1 to base. Level 1 radiation alert. Need a medevac with the RAD team. Misty said into the communicator. You got it, Eagle 1. Miranda said back. Get on your RAD suits. Richard said, already in the process of doing that.